I want to tell you something that changed everything for me, and I believe with my whole heart it will change everything for you too. There is a small signal you can light in your mind right now, this very moment, that will cause money to follow you like a faithful companion. Not chase it, not beg for it, not struggle and strain and exhaust yourself, but light a signal, a beacon, a flame, so small yet so powerful that prosperity has no choice but to find its way to you. Most people spend their entire lives doing it backwards. They look at their empty bank account and feel fear. They look at their bills and feel panic. They look at their circumstances and declare them permanent, fixed, unchangeable. And in that declaration, they lock the door to every blessing trying to reach them. But you, my dear friend, you're about to learn something different. You're about to discover that your mind is not a victim of your circumstances. Your mind is the architect of them. For years, I watched people suffer needlessly. I watched brilliant, talented, worthy people live in poverty while they cursed their luck, blamed the economy, pointed fingers at everyone and everything except the one place where the power truly lived, their own consciousness. And then I discovered the law that governs everything, the law that cannot be broken, only used or misused, the law of mind. You see, your mind is constantly broadcasting signals. Every thought is a signal sent out into the invisible realm where all things exist before they become physical. When you think a thought of lack, you send out a signal of lack, and the universe, which is nothing if not obedient, brings you more experiences of lack. When you think a thought of struggle, you magnetize struggle to yourself. But here's the miraculous part, the part that should make your heart leap. When you think a thought of abundance, when you hold an image of prosperity in your mind with faith and expectancy, you light a signal that abundance must follow. This isn't wishful thinking. This isn't fairy dust and fantasy. This is law, as dependable as gravity, as certain as the sun rising. I have seen it work in my own life in ways that would make you weep with joy. I have seen it work in the lives of countless others who came to me broken, desperate, convinced they were cursed or unlucky or born under the wrong star. And within weeks, sometimes days, of learning to light this signal properly, money began to flow to them from sources they never imagined. Let me be clear about what I mean by signal. I'm not talking about positive thinking in the shallow way most people understand it. I'm not suggesting you paste a fake smile on your face while your inner world screams in terror. I'm talking about something much deeper, much more powerful. I'm talking about a shift in your fundamental consciousness, a change in what you believe at the deepest level about yourself and about the universe you live in. The signal is this: an absolute inner knowing that you are provided for, that the universe is abundant, that there is more than enough for everyone, including you, that money is energy seeking expression through you, that you are a channel, not a stopping point, that life wants to prosper you, not punish you. When you light this knowing inside yourself, when you tend it like a small flame that must be protected and fed, everything changes. But here's what stops most people. They try to light this signal while simultaneously clutching their fear. They say affirmations about abundance while their stomach churns with anxiety. They visualize wealth while their inner voice whispers that they don't deserve it, that it's too good to be true, that people like them don't get those kinds of blessings. And so, the signal gets scrambled. Mixed messages go out, and the universe, confused by the contradiction, brings experiences that match the confusion. You must become single-minded. You must choose. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot hold faith and fear in the same space. One must go. And I'm here to tell you, let fear go. Release it like a bird that was never meant to be caged. Your fear has never protected you. It has only imprisoned you. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about your actual circumstances, the actual numbers in your bank account, the actual bills on your table, the actual job that doesn't pay enough, the actual economy, the actual. And you're wondering how a signal in your mind can possibly change these very real, very tangible things. This is where you must trust me. This is where you must be willing to suspend your doubt long enough to test what I'm telling you. Because I promise you, on everything I hold sacred, that your outer circumstances are nothing more than old signals made manifest. They are yesterday's consciousness appearing as today's reality. They are the fruit of seeds you planted with past thinking. And if you don't like the fruit, you must plant different seeds. You must send out a different signal. Every single person who has ever moved from poverty to prosperity, from lack to abundance, from struggle to ease, did so by changing their inner world first. Not a single one waited for their circumstances to improve before they shifted their consciousness. They shifted their consciousness, and then, as if by magic but really by law, their circumstances rearranged themselves to match the new signal. I once knew a woman who came to me in such despair I could hardly bear it. She was a widow with 3 children, no income, no prospects, and a mountain of debt. She had been raised to believe that life was hard, that money was scarce, that she would always have to scrape by. And her life reflected that belief perfectly. But she was willing to learn. She was willing to try something different because nothing else had worked. I taught her to light the signal. Every morning, before her feet touched the floor, she would lie in bed and speak these words. Infinite abundance is mine now. Money flows to me easily and constantly. I am a magnet for prosperity. But more important than the words was the feeling she cultivated. She would imagine how it would feel to open her mailbox and find checks instead of bills. She would imagine the relief, the joy, the gratitude. She would sink into that feeling until it became more real than her current circumstances. At first, her mind fought her. It screamed that she was being ridiculous, that she was lying to herself, that nothing would change. But she persisted. She protected her signal like a mother protecting a newborn. She refused to speak words of lack. She refused to entertain thoughts of limitation. When fear knocked, she didn't pretend it wasn't there, but she didn't invite it in for tea either. She acknowledged it and chose faith instead. Within 2 weeks, something extraordinary happened. A distant relative she barely knew passed away and left her a small inheritance. Not a fortune, but enough to clear her most pressing debts and give her breathing room. Was it coincidence? You might think so. But it wasn't the end of the story. Within a month, she was offered a job she hadn't applied for. Within 3 months, her income had tripled. Within a year, she was living in a beautiful home. Her children were thriving, and she had become a magnet for opportunities that seemed to seek her out. She didn't become a different person. She lit a different signal. And the universe, always faithful, always responsive, followed that signal home to her. You can do this too. You must do this. Because living in lack when abundance is your birthright is a tragedy. Struggling when ease is available is unnecessary suffering. And I cannot bear to see one more person waste their precious life force pushing against doors that would open if they simply changed their inner stance. The signal you light doesn't have to be large. In fact, it's better if it's small at first. A small flame you can actually believe in is more powerful than a bonfire of pretend faith. Start where you are. If you can't believe in millions, believe in hundreds. If you can't believe in hundreds, believe in enough. If you can't believe in ease, believe in a little less struggle. Meet yourself where you are, and then gently, consistently, turn your face toward the light. Here's what lighting the signal looks like in practical terms. You wake up in the morning, and before your mind starts racing through your problems, you pause. You take a breath. You say, either out loud or silently, something wonderful is happening to me today. Money is finding its way to me now. You don't have to believe it completely. You just have to be willing to plant the seed. Throughout your day, whenever you think about money, you catch yourself. If the thought is fearful, if it's about lack, if it's about how little you have or how hard things are, you gently redirect. You say, thank you for abundance. I have more than enough. I am provided for. Again, you don't have to feel it fully. You're building the feeling through repetition. When you pay a bill, instead of resentment or fear, you say, I bless this payment and know that as I give, I receive. Money circulates freely in my life. You turn every transaction into an affirmation of flow, not scarcity. You refuse to see yourself as a victim of economics. You claim your power as a creator. And here's something crucial. You must stop talking about your problems. I don't mean you ignore them. I mean you stop rehearsing them. Every time you tell someone how broke you are, how hard things are, how expensive everything is, you're lighting a signal for more lack. Your words have power. They're not just descriptions of reality, they're commands to the creative force within you. Instead, speak the reality you're creating. Talk about what's improving, what you're grateful for, and you're believing for. Even if it hasn't manifested yet, speak it as if it's already on its way. Because it is. The moment you light the signal, the response begins. It may not be visible yet, but it's in motion. Let me tell you about the invisible realm. Because understanding this changes everything. There is a world beyond what your physical eyes can see, a world where all possibilities exist simultaneously. In that realm, there is a version of your life where you have more than enough money. There's a version where you live in abundance, where you give generously, where you never worry about finances. That version isn't fantasy. It's as real as the version you're currently experiencing. The only difference is which signal you're broadcasting. When you light a signal for lack, you tune into the frequency where lack exists. When you light a signal for abundance, you tune into the frequency where abundance exists. You're not creating something from nothing, you're selecting which existing reality you want to experience. It's like changing the channel on a television. The other channels don't disappear just because you're not watching them. They're all broadcasting simultaneously. You simply choose which one to tune into. This is why faith is so important. Faith is the ability to tune into what you cannot yet see. It's the willingness to believe in the signal you're sending, even when your circumstances are showing you old programming. Faith is not pretending. It's knowing that there's a delay between the signal and the manifestation, and staying loyal to the signal during that delay. Most people give up too soon. They light the signal for a day, maybe a week, and when they don't see immediate results, they declare it doesn't work and go back to their old patterns. But would you plant a seed in the ground and then dig it up the next day to see if it's growing? Of course not. You trust the process. You water the ground. You believe in the invisible work happening beneath the surface. You must do the same with your signal. The universe is always responding to you, always. There is no moment when it's not listening, not responding, not arranging circumstances to match your dominant consciousness. But it responds to what you truly believe, not what you pretend to believe. It responds to the signal that's most consistent, most charged with emotion, most repeated. So if you affirm abundance once a day but worry about money 50 times a day, which signal do you think is stronger? This is why you must become vigilant with your mind. You must guard your thoughts like a sentry guards a gate. When a thought of lack tries to enter, you stop it at the door. You don't judge yourself for having the thoughts come to all of us. But you don't entertain it. You don't feed it. You don't let it set up camp in your consciousness. You acknowledge it and replace it with the truth you're choosing to believe. And what is that truth? The truth is that you live in an abundant universe created by an abundant source. The truth is that lack is an illusion created by false belief. The truth is that you are worthy of prosperity simply because you exist. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do anything except align your consciousness with the truth of abundance. I know this challenges everything you've been taught. You've been taught that you have to work hard for money, that you have to struggle, that only a few people get to be wealthy, that you're lucky if you just get by. But these are lies. These are beliefs passed down through generations of people who didn't know the law. And you get to be the one who breaks the pattern. You get to be the one who discovers that ease is possible, that flow is natural, that abundance is your inheritance. Let me tell you what happens when you commit to lighting this signal and protecting it. Your entire life begins to reorganize itself around this new frequency. And I mean reorganize in ways that will astonish you. People who used to drain your energy suddenly fade into the background, not through drama or confrontation, but through a gentle, almost miraculous dissolution. They stop calling. They get busy with their own lives. The relationship simply completes itself. Opportunities that were invisible to you before suddenly appear, not because they weren't there, but because your signal wasn't tuned to receive them. You'll be walking down the street and bump into exactly the person who has the answer you've been seeking. You'll open a book to precisely the page you needed to read. You'll receive an email at the exact moment you were wondering about that very thing. This isn't magic. This is physics. This is you becoming a clear channel for the abundance that has been trying to reach you all along. The static is clearing. The interference is dissolving, and what's left is pure signal. But here's what most people don't tell you about this process. It requires vigilance. Not the exhausting kind of vigilance where you're white-knuckling your way through affirmations you don't believe. I'm talking about the gentle, consistent practice of returning to your signal whenever you notice you've drifted, because you will drift. You'll have days when that old familiar heaviness tries to creep back in. You'll catch yourself falling into worry, into anxiety, into the old patterns that feel like home because they've been home for so long. And in those moments, you don't need to beat yourself up. You don't need to start over from scratch. You simply need to notice, and then gently, lovingly, return to your signal. Think of it like tuning a radio. You don't throw the radio away when it drifts off station. You simply adjust the dial. One small turn, and suddenly the music comes back in clear. That's all this is. A gentle adjustment. Remembering. A return. And in this return, you discover something extraordinary. The very things you were chasing, grasping, clinging to, they were never meant to be hunted down like prey. They were meant to find you. Like birds returning to their nest, opportunities and blessings know their way home when the environment is right. I'm reminded of the woman who came to me, exhausted from years of networking, forcing connections, attending every event, saying yes to every introduction. She was depleted. Her business was struggling despite all this effort. I asked her a simple question. What if you stopped chasing clients and started attracting them? She looked at me as though I'd suggested she sprout wings and fly. But she was desperate enough to try. She stopped the frantic networking. She began each morning with a simple affirmation. The right clients find me effortlessly. She focused on her craft, on excellence, on joy in her work. Within 3 weeks, a former colleague reached out. Then a referral came from an unexpected source, then another. Within 2 months, she had more ideal clients than in the previous year of exhausting effort. This is the divine paradox. Effort without strain, action without force, movement without struggle. You see, the universe doesn't reward struggle, it rewards alignment. Your worthiness isn't proven by how hard you work or how much you sacrifice. Your worthiness simply is. It's the starting point, not the destination. Think of a tree. Does it strain to grow? Does it force its fruit into being? No. It draws from deep roots. It receives sunlight. It allows the seasons to move through it. And in perfect timing, without anxiety or doubt, it bears fruit abundantly. You are that tree. Your roots are your faith, your connection to the infinite. Your sunlight is divine love, always available, never withheld. Your seasons are the natural rhythms of your life, expansion and rest, giving and receiving, doing and being. When you trust this rhythm, when you stop trying to be in constant summer, forcing perpetual harvest, you tap into a power far greater than willpower. You access grace. Grace is not something you earn. Grace is something you allow. When you stop fighting for what you want and start claiming what's already yours, resistance dissolves. The universe doesn't respond to your struggle. It responds to your certainty. I've watched people transform their entire lives simply by changing one internal conversation. Not affirmations they repeat mechanically while doubting every word, but a genuine shift in what they believe is possible for them. You know what belief really is? It's emotional agreement. Your mind might say yes, but if your gut says no, nothing moves. Real belief feels like remembering something you already know. Like coming home to a truth that was waiting for you all along. Think about when you're absolutely certain of something small. You're certain the sun will rise tomorrow. You're certain gravity will keep your feet on the ground. You don't affirm these things nervously. You don't visualize them with desperate intensity. You simply know them. That knowing is what moves mountains. Most spiritual teaching makes manifesting sound like a part-time job. Do this technique for 20 minutes. Visualize that outcome twice daily. Script your future every morning. And people wonder why they're exhausted and still stuck. The real work isn't in the doing. It's in the being. It's in becoming the person who already has what they desire, not pretending, not faking it, but genuinely inhabiting that consciousness. When you're that person, right action flows naturally. You don't have to force it. You don't have to figure it out. The way reveals itself because you're finally standing in the right place to see it. I'll tell you what happens when you truly shift. Opportunities appear that were invisible before. Conversations happen that open unexpected doors. You think of someone and they call. You need something and it arrives. Not because the universe suddenly started paying attention, but because you finally aligned with the frequency where these things live. This isn't magic, it's mechanics. Everything exists on a frequency. Fear has a frequency, lack has a frequency, and abundance has a frequency. You can't be tuned to lack and receive abundance any more than you can be tuned to one radio station and hear another. So, how do you change your frequency? You stop arguing with reality. You stop insisting that at times should times be different than it is. Because every time you argue with what is, you create resistance. And resistance is just another word for being out of alignment. When you say, I shouldn't be broke right now, you're resisting. When you say, why do bad things always happen to me? You're resisting. When you complain, when you blame, when you justify your circumstances, you're cementing yourself into that frequency. Now, I'm not saying you pretend everything is perfect. I'm not asking you to fake positivity or slap affirmations over a wound that needs tending. That's spiritual bypassing, and it doesn't work. What I'm saying is this: acceptance is the doorway to transformation. You can't change what you won't acknowledge, and you can't shift your frequency while you're busy defending why you're stuck. So you start by telling the truth, not the story, the truth. The story is, I'm broke because my boss doesn't pay me enough, and the economy is terrible, and nobody appreciates my work. The truth is, I am experiencing a lack of money right now, and I am ready to shift. Do you feel the difference? One keeps you in victimhood. The other puts you back in the driver's seat. When you accept where you are without judgment, without making it mean something about your worth, you stop feeding it energy. You stop making it your identity. And the moment you stop identifying with lack, it begins to lose its grip on you. This is what it means to change your frequency. You withdraw your attention from what you don't want. You stop rehearsing the problem. You stop telling everyone who will listen how hard things are. And instead, you begin to practice the feeling of what you desire. Not the having, the feeling. Because the universe doesn't respond to what you want, it responds to what you are. If you want abundance but you feel anxious, worried, and desperate, you're not a match. If you want love but you feel unworthy, bitter, and closed off, you're not a match. Your job is not to chase the thing. Your job is to become the frequency of the thing. And you do that through your inner conversation, through the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening, through the images you hold in your mind before you fall asleep. You do it by asking yourself, how would I feel if this were already done? How would I move through my day? What would I think about? How would I treat myself? And then you live from that place. Not someday. Today. That's the shift. That's the turning point. When you stop treating faith like a weekend hobby and start living from it as your baseline reality. I've watched people transform their entire existence because they finally understood this one thing. The universe doesn't respond to your wishes, it responds to your assumptions. What are you assuming right now about your life? Not what you're hoping for, not what you're praying for on Sunday morning. What are you times assuming times is true? Because that assumption, that's your real prayer. That's what's being answered every single day. If you assume struggle, you'll find evidence everywhere. If you assume lack, your eyes will spot every empty pocket and closed door. But if you assume abundance, if you assume that life is rigged in your favor, suddenly you start noticing the opportunities that were always there. You start seeing the synchronicities, the perfect timing, the doors opening just as you approach them. This isn't magical thinking. This is understanding how perception works. You literally cannot see what you're not looking for. Your brain filters out thousands of pieces of information every second, and it decides what to show you based on what you've told it matters. So when you assume wealth, your brain starts filtering for wealth. When you assume love, you start noticing love everywhere. When you assume miracles, you become a magnet for the miraculous. I had a student once who couldn't find work, months of applications, months of rejection. She came to me exhausted, convinced the world was against her. I asked her one question: What are you assuming about employers? She didn't even hesitate. That they don't want me, that I'm not good enough, that someone younger and cheaper will always get picked instead. There it was, her assumption, her real prayer. I told her, change the assumption, change the result. She started assuming, against all her current evidence, that employers were looking for exactly what she offered. That her experience was valuable. That the right position was actively seeking her out. 3 weeks later, she had 2 offers. Not because the job market changed, because her filter changed, because she started showing up differently, speaking differently, seeing differently. And the universe, that great, loving, intelligent force, had no choice but to respond to her new frequency. You see, this is what most people don't understand about manifestation. They think it's about forcing the universe to bend to their will, about pushing and manipulating and controlling outcomes. But that's not how it works at all. The universe doesn't respond to your words. It doesn't even respond to your desires. It responds to your assumptions, to what you truly believe is already yours. Emma didn't sit around visualizing a better life while secretly believing she wasn't worthy of it. She didn't affirm abundance while feeling poor. She didn't declare herself healthy while identifying as sick. She changed her entire identity at the level of consciousness. And here's what happened next, and this part always gives me chills. Within 2 weeks of her shift, she received a phone call. A former colleague she hadn't spoken to in 3 years was starting a new company and needed someone with her exact skill set. The position paid nearly double what she'd been making. But here's the thing. That opportunity had actually been in the works for months. Her name had been mentioned. Connections had been forming. The universe had been arranging the pieces. She just couldn't see it because she was standing in the wrong place energetically. The moment she shifted her consciousness, she became visible to her good. Think about that. Your blessings might already be looking for you, but they can't find you while you're vibrating at the frequency of lack and limitation. It's like trying to tune into a radio station. If you're set to 98.5 FM, you're not going to hear what's broadcasting. On 101.3, the signal is there. It's always been there, but you're not positioned to receive it. Emma's health began to shift too. Not overnight, but steadily. She stopped fighting her body and started honoring it. She spoke to it with love instead of frustration. And slowly, her energy returned. The inflammation decreased. Her doctors were honestly shocked. Was it the new consciousness or the new treatments? It was both. Because consciousness directs energy, and energy directs matter. Within 6 months, Emma's life was unrecognizable. New career, better health, a relationship that actually felt peaceful and loving. Financial breathing room for the first time in years. And here's what happened next, the part that still gives me chills. Once they started experiencing these shifts, they began to understand something profound. The law wasn't just about getting stuff. It was about becoming who they were always meant to be. The person who worried constantly about money, they realized they'd been living from a poverty consciousness since childhood, when they watched their parents fight about bills every night. The affirmation didn't just bring money, it revealed a core belief that had been running their entire life like invisible software. The woman seeking love? She discovered she'd been subconsciously choosing emotionally unavailable partners because deep down, she didn't believe she deserved to be chosen first. The work she did transformed not just her relationship status, but her entire sense of self-worth. This is the part about the law of attraction that most teachings skip right over. It's a mirror. It shows you what you really believe about yourself, about life, about what's possible. And when you see those beliefs clearly, when you drag them out of the darkness and into the light, you can finally change them. I watched people have these moments of recognition, these "oh my God, I've been doing this to myself" revelations. And while those moments can be painful, they're also incredibly liberating. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you recognize the belief, you can't unknow it. And that awareness itself begins the transformation. One man told me, "I realized I've been sabotaging every good opportunity that came my way because some part of me believed I didn't deserve success. I'd get right to the edge of a breakthrough, then do something to mess it up, every single time." The law of attraction showed him that pattern. And once he saw it, he could consciously choose differently. This is where the real power lives. Not in the magical thinking, not in the vision boards alone, but in the deep, transformative work of aligning your inner beliefs with your outer desires. When that alignment happens, when what you claim with your words matches what you believe in your heart, the universe has no choice but to respond. You see, I've watched people affirm prosperity while simultaneously counting their pennies with fear. I've seen them declare love is coming while treating themselves with contempt. I've witnessed them speak health while poisoning their bodies with worry and stress. And then they wonder why the affirmations don't work. They blame the law. They blame the universe. But the universe isn't the problem. The misalignment is. The universe operates with perfect precision. It's a mirror, not a magician. It reflects back to you the dominant vibration you're holding, not the words you're saying, but the frequency you're broadcasting from the depths of your being. You cannot fool this law. You cannot trick infinite intelligence with surface-level declarations while your subconscious screams the opposite. This is why some people affirm for years and see nothing change. They're speaking one language with their mouth and another with their heart. And the heart always wins. The subconscious always wins. Because that's where the real instructions are being sent out into the field of infinite possibilities. So what do you do when you discover this gap? When you realize your words and your beliefs aren't matching? You don't give up. You don't throw out the affirmations. You go deeper. You become an archaeologist of your own consciousness. You dig down into those hidden places where the old programs live, the fear, the unworthiness, the doubt, and you bring them into the light. You ask yourself, what would I need to believe for this affirmation to feel true? What old story am I still telling myself that contradicts what I'm trying to create? And then, with compassion and courage, you begin to rewrite those stories. Not with force, but with gentle, persistent truth. This is the sacred work. This is where transformation actually happens. Not in the speaking, but in the becoming. Not in the declaring, but in the deep inner shift that makes the declaration inevitable, natural, true. When you do this work, when you align your inner world with your spoken, the word something remarkable happens. The affirmations stop feeling like work. They start feeling like truth. They flow from you effortlessly because they're no longer wishes. They're recognition. They're remembering who you actually are and what you're actually capable of receiving.